You're listening to
Sound.
Insightful.
Bible teaching.
For a
Meaningful.
For a meaningful Christian walk.
Yeah, isn't this wonderful? We had winter last week and summer this week. Maybe we'll have spring next week. But anyway, we're not here to enjoy the weather. If we were, we would not live in Minnesota, right? We're here to enjoy God. Amen. And so tonight we're going to come to really the last part of Genesis. We're going to spend 2 weeks on this. And this is a matter of blessing. We want to get into this to see what is the principle of blessing, what blessing is, what blessing isn't. You know, blessing is a word, it's one of those words like grace. It's like, what does that mean? If I asked you, what does blessing mean? And, you know, I'm not asking for a response, but you can just consider yourself. If you sneeze, someone might say, God bless you. You know what that means? There used to be this superstition that when you sneezed, your spirit was going out. And so you had to say, God bless you to get your spirit back in. So, it's okay if you say God bless you, but just, it's, maybe something better would be, do you need a Kleenex? Or do you have a cold? Something like that. And we might say to each other, God bless you. I mean, when you don't sneeze, right? And, you know, we probably all have met a lot of people. Maybe we say it frequently ourselves. Nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying we shouldn't say that. But what does it mean? If I say, Lauren, God bless you. Or Nadia, may the Lord bless you. And you were like, great. What does that mean? You know, Angel, may God bless you. Now, maybe Angel needs a new car. And if he got a new car, he could say, the Lord blessed me with a car. I wouldn't say that's wrong. But it's really short of seeing what blessing really is. You know, we live in a physical world. And so our thoughts are altogether physical. Right now, wouldn't the Lord bless us with some air conditioning, right? Or a sudden drop in temperature, something like that. I think the Lord knows that we would like that. I would like that a lot. But, you know, there are, you know, among, I'd say, religious people, not just Christian people, there's this thing, you know, it's like we're out for something physical. You know, people would offer a sacrifice. Sometimes they'd sacrifice people so their God would bless them. They'd have a good year on the farm. Among Christians, you got this really, I'm supposed to be kind and understanding. I'm going to say this is a really terrible thing called the prosperity gospel, which is altogether physical, and it completely falls short of anything the Lord wants to do. And it's used by people to enrich themselves. They'd say, you know, hey, it's Easter. The Lord really wants to bless us. It's Easter. He really wants to pour out his blessing. So if you'd send $500 in, you know, the Lord will unleash his blessing to you, which is you will get rich. If you look at the people who followed the Lord, not counting the Lord himself, you know, who were his closest followers? You know, the apostles, the disciples. They say, if you've got faith, the Lord will bless you. And if you don't receive that kind of blessing, you don't have enough faith. I would conclude from this, being an analytical person, the Apostle Paul was devoid of faith. Because look at all the things he suffered. And he never got rich. And in the end, he got killed. Peter, all the 12 apostles, the only one, according to history, that did not get martyred was John. They tried to boil him alive. and he survived. And then they exiled him to the island of Patmos, which was great because then he got his final visions in the book of Revelation. So don't confine your thought of blessing to something physical. It's the Lord knows what we need. He's not here to make us suffer. If you need, I have prayed for money, but, I could tell you stories. I'm not going to tell you stories. But it's kind of like I need $500, and I would get $500. I wouldn't get $5,000. I wouldn't get $5 million. It's like I needed $500, and the Lord would provide. If we need food, if we need shelter, if we need clothing, the Lord will take care of all those things. But he says, seek first the kingdom, and all these things will be added to you. And he says, where your treasure is, there your heart will be. So if we set our heart on earthly treasures, material things, physical things, that's where our heart is. We should set our heart on the things in the heavens. What things are in the heavens? Not riches. That's where God is. So we need to set our heart there. Watchman Nee, he had a few sayings I really like. One was, does God want your heart or your money? What do you think, Angel? Does God want your heart or your money? Your heart. What do you think, Matt? Yeah, your heart. I think we'd all say that. And the answer is your money. Because where your money is, there your heart will be. So if you give the Lord all your money, your heart's going to go after it. That's very practical. It's kind of funny, but our heart is attracted to all these things. But we're talking about blessing. And where did we first see blessing in the Bible? We covered this in Genesis. Remember Melchizedek and Abraham? Abraham just went out to a big battle, rescue his nephew Lot. And then he was met by the king of Salem, this guy named Melchizedek, who's a very good type of Christ. No genealogy, no end of days. King of Salem, king of peace. He's a priest of the God, the Most High. And it says he blessed Abraham and said, blessed be Abraham. Again, what did he give him? Now, he did give him some food, but that, that's not the blessing we get. Actually, the real blessing is God himself. And how do you get that from someone? That someone has to have God. Now, Jacob, at the end of his life, he was fully transformed. He was fully matured. If you got Jacob, if he said good morning to you, God would flow out. Don't get kind of a funny idea. But, sometimes we need something and it's very clear what we need. I'm hungry. I need some food. Lord, give me some food. I'm stuck on the highway. My car doesn't start. Lord, praying for my car or for rescue, something like that, and the Lord will give that. Have you ever been in a situation where there's no physical solution? And if you haven't, you will be. And it's like, someone could come and give me all the money and it's not going to fix this. And someone can give me some good advice and it's not going to fix this. What I need is God. You know what Jehovah means? It means I am. This is one of the primary names of God. This is God in his interaction with man. He says, I am. What do you need? I am. Whatever we need, he is. And we're not. So, if you're You just took 3 midterms and failed all of them. What's going to happen to me? And then get a note from home, your dog ran away, and then your best friend, was mad at you, and just, all this kind of stuff. Just like, woe is me. What am I going to do? Well, we need the Lord. We really need the Lord. Going back to the Apostle Paul, he had we don't know what it is, but he had these transcending revelations. And so in order that he wouldn't become proud, it said that he received a thorn in his flesh. We don't really know what that is, but we do know if I had a thorn and I put it in your flesh, it's not pleasant. And so what did he do? He didn't just grit his teeth and say, I'm here to suffer. It's not going to kill me, it's going to make me stronger. No, he didn't do that. He asked God 3 times to take the thorn away. Nothing wrong with that. But God's reply to him was, thorn stays, but my grace is sufficient for you. Another word. Grace, again, is just God himself coming to us as our life supply, as our enjoyment. If you've had a bad day, maybe the Gophers just got beat.
Just went without this.
Yeah. I mean that was bad. I felt bad. But then what are you going to do? You can't change it. But what I can do is I can enjoy God, which sounds like, well, how do you do that? Well, anyway, you can do it. And you can get out of your situation. And get out of your, misery, get out of all these different things. We can just really enjoy the Lord. This is the real blessing. And if I'm just in the middle of it, I'm stuck, I'm just depressed, what am I going to do? I need to go to Peter. I'm saying this, Peter. I could recommend Peter. And what's he going to do for me? I mean, you're not rich, right? Nope. Are you a good cook?
Yes.
I can feed myself.
Yeah, he can feed himself. You're pretty good with a hammer, but ultimately, what do I need? I don't need like some consoling words like, oh, it'll all be okay. Just give it time. I don't know what Peter would do. If I came to Peter with my problems and laid them out, he might just say, well, how about we sing a song? And it's like, is there a song for this? And it's like, yeah, any of the songs work for this. Because we just want to get into our spirit and enjoy the Lord. And his speaking, he begins to speak faith into me. He begins to speak Christ into me. He begins to speak, the divine life into me. And then we get together and we enjoy some songs. We pray and we pray over the word and have some fellowship together. And I leave, none of my problems has changed. None of my problems are solved. But the big problem is solved because I'm enjoying God. That's the real blessing. And that's the blessing we want to have, and that's the blessing we want to be able to give to each other. But this takes, you can't give someone the overflow of life unless you've got some life. So that's why Jacob, he was the conniving supplanter, he was all these things. But at the end of his life, he was transformed, he was matured. He was just like a big sponge. And if you squeezed him, just the divine life will come out. So we see this. I'm skipping ahead a little bit here. Well, in Hebrews chapter 7, it talks about Melchizedek. And it establishes this principle in verse 7, that the lesser is blessed by the greater. So, once again, and we can all say, God bless you, the Lord bless you. No problem. Don't get kind of strange and say, I can't say that anymore. I don't have enough Christ. It's okay. If Angel is having a bad day, feels like, maybe God's not real, but he sees me and he says, I should say something to Dave. I'll just say, the Lord bless you. I'd be very happy to hear that. I don't know how much Christ is coming with that, but it's still good. Rather than saying, I don't have anything, I better just keep my mouth shut. You don't know. These little things. There's a brother, I'm going to digress for a second. Probably almost none of you know him. He doesn't live here, but he's older than me. And he's had, some real trials in his life lately, including, some very significant health problems. To the point where I thought, I'd check with someone, it's like, is he still alive? And I didn't hear anything from him for a long time. About 3 weeks ago, I got a text from him, and it was just a Bible verse. But it just partly it was just like, it's like, you're alive. And you're active. And you thought enough to send me this verse, which at that moment really met my need. It's one of those rare times in my life that someone actually gave me something I needed. So that really ministered to me. I could say that was a real blessing to me. I was in the middle of something. It's not a life and death, but it's something I was trying to figure out, some plumbing thing. Still don't know how to figure it out. His verse, sending the verse to me, did not help me with the plumbing problem. It still exists. But it really lifted my spirit. So we can do this. But the greater, who's the greatest? Christ. God is the greatest. But if you ever see someone in the Bible giving a blessing, and there's not that many instances, you can just realize something. I'm going to skip down to Genesis 47. Because here, this is at the end of the story of Jacob and Joseph. Now Jacob has found out that Joseph is alive, and he goes down to Egypt. He sees Joseph, and they embrace and cry, and it's all really good. And Jacob, it's like, I've seen Joseph, it's enough. But he takes him before Pharaoh. Now, Pharaoh at the time was, arguably, and I think probably actually, the highest ruler on the earth. These different nations would rise up. But at that time, Egypt was probably number one. I have no idea what was going on in China. They're not mentioned in the Bible. So what does Joseph do? What does Jacob do with Pharaoh? He doesn't come in and bow down before him, say, wow, you're so great. Thanks for taking care of us. Oh, you're so good to us. He goes, I don't know what it looked like, but bless you. I don't know what it is. Just says he blessed Pharaoh. He didn't give him a lot of money because he didn't have a lot of money. And it says he's leaning on his staff. So he's old. And even physically, he's not that strong. But he's so filled with God. And he recognizes, I can bless this guy. And Pharaoh didn't say, wait a minute. I'm the ruler here. If there's any blessing to be done, I'm going to do it. This means Jacob was higher than the highest ruler at that time because he blessed him. So where do we go from there? I skipped over these verses in Galatians. These talk about the blessing of Abraham. They who are of faith are blessed with believing Abraham. In you, that's in Abraham, and in his seed, all the nations will be blessed. and that the blessing of Abraham might come to the Gentiles in Christ Jesus. This is all about the blessing, right? How were the nations blessed by Abraham? We did not get a big inheritance from him, right? But what did we get? We got Christ. His seed, his unique seed is Christ. And Christ today is available to us as the Spirit. So that's why the end of the verse says that we might receive the promise of the Spirit through faith. So the Spirit's been promised to us. When we believe, what do you get? You get Christ. How do you get Christ? You get Christ as the Spirit. So today, Christ is available to us. This is the real blessing. And the more we enjoy this, the more we enjoy Christ day by day by day, little by little, we get more of Christ added to us, beginning to saturate us, so that even, it's like, everyone's struggling, having a hard time, and then Magali walks in. And just all the problems are solved. Just because she's there. And we've got the presence of God with us. This happens. This is like real life kind of thing. You're in a situation, you're in a dire straits, you're under the attack of the enemy, and then someone comes in full of Christ. And just, I can't remember what my problem was. Just, we're in the enjoyment. The real blessing is to bring you to God and to bring God into you. So if we can do this for people, this is really what we need to do. Now, okay, so Jacob's in Egypt, and he's about to die. He's lived a long time, had a hard life, but he's got some blessing to do still. So who does he bless first? In Genesis 48, Jacob, who's Israel, he sees Joseph's sons. Joseph has two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. And he said, who are these? Now, the thing is, he's pretty much blind, too. But he must have been able to make out. He got these two sons. And Joseph said, these are my sons. Jacob says, bring them to me, please, that I may bless them. So Jacob, he just wants to bless these ones. And then what happens is really interesting. So Joseph takes them. Now, which one should get the blessing? Firstborn, right? That's the way it goes. So he's got two sons. Manasseh is the firstborn, and Ephraim is the second one. And he's got him in his hands, so he's got Manasseh in his, his left hand. So he's going left hand. So then Jacob's here, and so he would bless Manasseh with his right hand, which would be the blessing hand, and the other one would get the left-handed blessing, which is going to be a secondary blessing. Okay. What does Jacob do? He goes like this. Yeah. And it shouldn't be done like that, right? Because Manasseh's the oldest, Ephraim's the youngest. But then Joseph sees it, and Joseph does something not so good. He takes Jacob's hands and he says, no, it's like this. Dad, you probably don't know, this one's the older one. Now I just want you to be clear, I don't want you making any mistakes here. So, put your hands straight. Manasseh gets a blessing. And he said, I know. He says, I know that. But it said, he stretched out his hand and laid it on Ephraim's head, although he was younger. His left hand upon Manasseh's head. He said, guiding his hands with insight. So even in our blessing, it's not random. It's not just, there was, Jacob knew what he was doing. And it was not according to his son's concept, man's concept. if we get involved in that way, I'll use Angel again as an example. So let's say Angel is a bank robber and a bad guy,
That checks out.
Yeah. And someone comes and it's like, I need to bless someone here. I'm going to bless this guy. And Will rises up and says, no. You don't know. This guy's really bad. Maybe give it to Matt. He's stellar, or Jacob or Isaiah or someone, right? But, remember in the New Testament, there's one apostle. His name's Paul. He wasn't always an apostle. He was always given to God. But his former job was killing Christians and imprisoning them and putting them to death. So if the Spirit's going to come and choose someone to say, I'm going to bless this one, I'm going to fill him with God. Oh, Saul, how about you? Everyone would say, no, what are you doing? That's a terrible mistake, God. Obviously you don't know what you're doing, God. But the Lord knows. Saul was a chosen vessel, became very useful. So even in giving the blessing to the second-born, the Lord knows. This goes against the natural concept. It went against Joseph, his father's wishes. But we got to be careful that we don't limit God's blessing by our concept. And we can't. If the Lord wants to bless, we just let him bless. If the Spirit is being poured out, we let it be poured out. We don't bring in our concept. Like, no, you can't do that, can't do that. So we don't want to limit the Lord. Now, there's a few verses here. And in Genesis 49, he's got, Jacob has 12 sons. And he gives a blessing to each one. And this isn't just a blessing, this is a prophetic word. So it's kind of like a little bit of prophetic word, a little bit of blessing. This is like the highest, you could say the highest function. Jacob was not a prophet. He's not listed among the prophets. He's never mentioned as a prophet. But in blessing his sons, it was a blessing with some prophetic insight. And we're not going to go through all 12 today. I think I'm just going to do 3. And that'll be good enough. But who are the first 3 sons? Who can name them without looking?
Reuben, Simeon, and Levi.
Reuben, Simeon, and Levi. Okay, who's the firstborn?
Reuben.
So Reuben, what should Reuben get? Huh? Sandwich, yeah. A Reuben sandwich, yeah. Better than a bowl of soup. But he again, he's the firstborn. He should get the topmost blessing, right? And he should get the birthright. We covered this before. What is the birthright? That's a double portion of the land. It's the kingship and it's the priesthood. I mean, he gets everything, basically. Everyone else gets, here's what's left over. He got nothing. Why? I mean, it says, starting in verse 3, it says, Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might, and the firstfruits of my vigor, preeminent in dignity and preeminent in power. This is really good, right? Sounds good. Reuben should have said, okay, Dad, stop there. We'll just take that. Ebullient as water, you will not have the preeminence. Because you went up to your father's bed, then you defiled it, he went up to my couch. So we've got another case of, fornication. And it cost him. It cost him big. You know, with Joseph, he's working in Potiphar's house, and he got into a situation where he was falsely accused of, improper conduct with Potiphar's wife. He didn't do anything wrong, but he was alone with her and he got in trouble. Reuben was much worse. He deliberately went up to his father's concubine and slept with her. And when it's mentioned, there's like Jacob has no big reaction. It's like he heard of it. And I don't know what he was thinking, or it wasn't like he's planning this, but this is a speaking very much in the Spirit. And he might have realized at that moment regarding Reuben, it's like, Reuben, you just cost yourself a lot. And Reuben eventually became a very nondescript tribe. In Numbers, the end of Numbers, Moses has some blessing concerning some of the sons, some of the tribes. And his word concerning Reuben, it's like, I pray you don't die out. So they were not flourishing. So we have to be careful. The blessing, on the one hand, the Lord can forgive everything. 1 John says, we confess our sins, he's able to forgive us, and cleanse us from every sin. But that doesn't mean it's not going to cost you. There will be, after this age, we're not going to get into this now, at least in the next age, there will be the kingdom, the millennial kingdom. What you do now will determine what you do then for that 1,000 years. We can rule and reign with Christ, or we can spend our time making up for our mistakes, going through summer school, everyone else having fun. You're stuck in class because you didn't study hard during the school year. I don't know what it's going to be like. But he cost himself. And he also cost himself through his children, even in the present age, because the good land was divided up by lot, and they are all given one portion, except someone got 2 portions, which turns out to be Joseph, because each of his sons got a portion. Reuben could have gotten 2, he only got 1. So even his enjoyment of the good land, which is also a type of our enjoyment of Christ, was more limited, because he did that. So we can't be loose. We got to be careful. The Lord wants to bless us, and I believe Jacob loved him and would have just loved to bless him, but it's like, sorry, son, you just did that. And so whatever blessing you're going to get is very limited. You're going to get your portion of the good land, but all the other things that you should have gotten, you cost yourself. The next 2, you've got Simeon and Levi. And doesn't have that much good to say about them. He says Simeon and Levi are brothers. That's about the best thing he says about them. Weapons of violence are their swords. Come not into their counsel, O my soul. Be not united with their assembly, O my glory. For in their anger they slew men, in their self-will they hamstrung oxen. Cursed be their anger, for it is fierce, and their wrath, for it is cruel. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. There's not much blessing in there. But this is what happened. Now, if you remember back, their sister Dinah, she was taken advantage of by this guy, and so the 2 brothers got together and cooked up a scheme where they killed everyone in the city, all the males. And it's pretty cruel. But they said, well, he defiled our sister. Still. Then when Joseph, his brothers cast him into a pit, sold him into slavery. We don't know who the ringleader was. But it could well have been Simeon. Because at one point, he sends all of them back to go back to Jacob. They still didn't know it was Joseph. But he kept one of them. He kept Simeon. And he kept him bound. And that may have been for Simeon to kind of reflect on what he might have done. But Simeon and Levi, these two are fierce. Their anger is fierce. And Jacob says, I don't want to be with them. And what happened when they took the good land, Simeon actually didn't get a portion. They had to borrow some or take some from Judah. So it's like they even didn't get their own. Levi, they became the Levites, so they got redeemed because they stood for God, used their fierceness to kill all their brothers when they had the big failure with Moses. But eventually they got the priesthood, but they were still scattered. They did not get a single portion of the land. They were scattered throughout all the good land. So this also came true. So I think we'll stop. But what's the main point? The main point is it's really hot. And we really want to end this, go somewhere and have some ice cream or something cold to drink. But even now, we can enjoy the Lord's blessing. May not be cool weather. We can enjoy the Lord. And we can bless one another. And we should seek to bless one another with the Lord. This is the highest blessing, and this is the blessing that we